to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from you, maker of heaven, creator of the earth. I lift my eyes up unto the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from you, maker of heaven, creator of the earth. Oh, how I need you, Lord. You are my only hope. You are my only prayer. So I will wait for you to come and rescue me, to come and give me life. I lift my eyes up unto the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from you, maker of heaven, creator of the earth. Oh, how I need you, Lord. You are my only hope. You are my only prayer. So I will wait for you to come and rescue me, to come and give me life. Oh, how I need you, Lord. You are my only hope. You are my only prayer. So I will wait for you to come and rescue me, to come and give me life. I lift my eyes up unto the mountains. Where does my help come from?
Let's really worship God in this next song, this Always Enough. He is always enough, no matter what the ground looks like, no matter what the rain or dryness looks like. He is always enough.
anthem of nations, rings out through the ages. And you're always enough, always enough. I rejoice, for my Savior reigns. I rejoice, for he lives in me. God on high, he has set me free, and worthy is the Lord. I rejoice, for my Savior reigns. I rejoice, for he lives in me. God on high, he has set me free, and worthy is the Lord. Your love is peace to the broken, faith for the widow, home for the orphan, strength for the weak. Your love is the anthem of nations, rings out through the ages. And you're always enough, you're always enough for me. In a dry and weary land, Lord, you are the rain.
All right, so a couple weeks ago we started looking in Revelation chapter 11. We were talking about the two witnesses. We talked about the 3.5-year span that they were given to be God's witnesses here on the earth. We talked about the end of that time when they were given over and they were killed. We talked about the number of days appointed at that time. That brought us back into Daniel and the number of days in Daniel chapter 12 that God had appointed for the ending of things, for the completion of his plan. And then that brought us back to where we're going to be today in Daniel chapter 9. And I mentioned this briefly a couple of months ago when talking about something else, but I want to just go over this today just so we're all on the same page. Now, for those of you that haven't been here long, we are a church that believes in a premillennial, pre-tribulation rapture of God's church. That's the position that I am teaching from today. There will be other teachers that might have a different take on this, but you're not with them right now, you're with me right now. So this is where I am coming from when we talk about this. So earlier in chapter 9, we see that Daniel had been studying the books of the prophets, Jeremiah, and he had come to the understanding that the time that Israel was going to spend in exile was appointed of God, and that it had a definitive end, at which point they would be returned back to Israel, the land of Israel. And so, I find it very interesting because Daniel's response to this understanding, to this information, wasn't to celebrate and go, woohoo, we're almost there, we're going home, to the Persians. What he did was he got on his face before God and confessed his sin and the sin of his people and begged God for clemency, begged God to forgive them, that his promises, God's prophetic promises, might be fulfilled. Now, this is one of those things that has caused a number of divisions in the church, And this is something that actually I was giving a lot of thought to earlier this week. When Daniel receives this, he's receiving a prophetic word from Jeremiah about God's plans. Now, what do we know about God's plans? They never fail. Okay? God doesn't say something is going to happen and then it just doesn't happen. Now, you can argue, oh, hello, I thought you were going to come preach. I'll go stand on this. No, because she'll have to get up. For example, God spoke to Jonah, and he said, I want you to go to Nineveh, and I want you to give them this word. And Jonah, being a prophet and a man of God, and also just a man, went the other direction, and you know that whole story. But Jonah did ultimately go and prophesy to Nineveh that God's destruction was coming on them. Now, at that point, God's plan was destruction. Insofar as we know, that was his plan. But what did the Ninevites do? They confessed, they repented, they put on sackcloth and ashes, and they begged God not to destroy them. Okay? And then God relented. You could even say repented, not because he was in error, but because he turned away from a course of action, and he allowed them to continue to thrive. Did God's plan just not come to be? Was God like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that they were going to ask for forgiveness. I didn't know that they would receive it this way. No, of course he knew that. But what was it going to take for them to get to that point where they would humble themselves before God? What would it take? Yeah, the end is nigh. Okay? Now, there are times we see in Scripture where God had set forth on a course of action and he did not follow through on that course of action. That doesn't mean that God is indecisive. When we are given those pictures, it's not because God is incapable of making a decision. For example, the children of Israel, a stiff-necked people. God has delivered them out of Egypt, and he takes them, he's going to bring them to the promised land. He took them the long way around. He didn't just go along the coast of the Mediterranean, and they would have been in Israel in a matter of days. Instead, he took them down into the Sinai Peninsula. And God created of them a nation of people, because up to that point, they had been slaves in Egypt. And God needed to develop in them the culture, the nature of what he wanted his declared people to be. But then, because people are people, and that means that sometimes we're not very smart, Israel sinned, and then sinned again, and then sinned again, and again, and again. And it got to the point where God is having a talk with Moses, and he says, Moses, get out of the way, because I'm bringing destruction on them. I'm going to wipe all of these clowns off the face of the earth, and then I will make of you a great nation. What happened? Moses actually interceded on behalf of the people, and not just the people, but also for God's name's sake. God, lest they would say of you, he had the power to deliver them out of Egypt, but then left them in the desert to destruction. God, for your name's sake, don't do this. And God did not do this. Did God change his mind? Is God just up there? Is God like us? A man like us that is stirred to wrath in one moment and peace in the next? No. God doesn't change. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. When these things are happening, it's not to show us the indecisive nature of God. He is a very decisive God. He knows everything. And he's always known everything. So when we see these things where it looks like God just is not capable of following through on a decision. That's not because of his inability, it's because of his grace. Because apart from his grace, all of mankind would come under the wrath of God. Each of these is a picture of God's grace. So, Daniel is reading through Jeremiah. He comes to the understanding that we are going to be here for X amount of years, and that time is actually coming upon us. He doesn't go out and tell all the Israelites, all the Jews to celebrate and rejoice and pack their bags. What does he do? He gets on his face to pray, God's will be done. Okay? I have no idea why I went from this direction to this direction. That's probably a good idea. So when Daniel receives this understanding, and remember, Daniel is loved of God. He is blessed of God with great wisdom, great insight, great understanding. And so he humbles himself before God, and he asks God to forgive him and then his people. That's a really good example for us to follow, that we should be asking God for forgiveness for ourselves first, and then that he would forgive others. That's kind of the whole nugget of the Feast of Atonement, Yom Kippur. The high priest gets to go into the most holy place that one time a year, that one day a year that he can go in. But first he must make atonement for himself and his family before he can go and make atonement for the nation of Israel. And let me just say this real quick. Regardless of what's going on in Washington, D.C., regardless of who is in power, we should be praying for our nation. Okay? And I know for some people, some presidents cause you to pray a whole lot more. And for some people, the presidents do not so much. But regardless, we should be praying for our nation. We should be praying for our leaders. Even if we disagree with them, on positions of politics, we should be praying for them because God put them in that place, and God has called us to pray for those that are in their positions. Okay? So, Daniel receives this word, he gets on his face, and he starts praying. So down here, verse 19, it just summarizes what he's praying. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, pay attention and act. Delay not for your own sake, O my God, because your city and your people are called by your name. Notice the focus of his prayer here is not for our benefit, but for God's benefit, because he is more concerned about God's name than he is about Daniel's name. Okay? You want more proof of that? Remember the whole setup for the Daniel in the den of lions? Remember that whole story? The wise men wanted to take him down a couple of notches. They wanted him out of the way because the king looked to him for wisdom more so than the other wise men at the time, the other magi at the time. And so they bring up this plot and they say, hey, we're going to do this. Anybody that doesn't do this should be thrown into the den of lions. Do you ever wonder why they had a den of lions? It's not like a natural thing where they just walking around one day and there's a bunch of lions in this cave. No, they were, Daniel is going to be thrown into this den of lions. They were keeping them there, what appears to me, for the sole purpose of eating people. That's whack. Okay? That's crazy. Could you imagine how that would go over here in America? You can, because we just had the alligator Alcatraz, remember? And we didn't put the alligators in place. We put the prison in place. But the whole thing behind that is anybody that gets out of our prison has got to deal with the alligators. Same purpose with Alcatraz. We put them on that island there, not because it was so far removed from people, but because in order to get from there to people, they got to cross shark-infested waters. There is something about getting eaten. If it doesn't make you uncomfortable, you're not thinking about it enough. Okay? Go watch National Geographic and watch some of these alligators eat stuff. And sharks eat stuff. And then put yourself in the place of that stuff. That's just, oof. All right. So, Daniel, when he was given the choice that he had to pray to no other God, he refused to accept it, and he kept his daily routine of getting on his knees and praying in view of everyone. He did it in the picture window. Because Daniel wasn't ashamed. Okay? So, as a result, he gets thrown into the lion's den. Not because Daniel was like, oh, look at me, but because Daniel refused to let anything or anyone insert themselves into that place between him and God. Nobody should be able to take the place of God in your life. Okay? So, here's the same thing. He is praying. He is asking God for God's name's sake. And then verse 20. While I was speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my plea before the Lord my God for the holy hill of my God, while I was speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the first, came to me in swift flight at the time of the evening sacrifice. He made me understand, speaking with me and saying, O Daniel, I have now come out to give you insight and understanding. At the beginning of your pleas for mercy, a word went out, and I have come to tell it to you, for you are greatly loved. Therefore, consider the words and understand the vision. For you are greatly loved. Can I just tell you today that God feels the same way about you? You are greatly loved. God's love is immeasurable. It's infinite. It's eternal. It has no beginning. It has no end. His heart is set toward you. And he desires to have relationship with you. Verse 24. 70 weeks are decreed about your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, and to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal both vision and prophet, and to anoint a most holy place. Now, there's quite a list here. This we see the first reference to 70 weeks are decreed, and they are decreed specifically to Daniel and the Jewish people. Okay? This is something we need to keep in mind when we overlay the Hebrew scriptures from the Old Testament with the Christian scriptures in the New Testament. The focus is always going to be on who, to whom the prophecy was given and to whom the prophecy is about. All right? So right here, we see that this prophetic 70 weeks is given specifically to the Jews. Specifically to the Jews. Now, will there be other people that will go through this 70 weeks? Absolutely, there were and are and will be. But the prophecy is Israel-centric, and not just Israel-centric, but Jerusalem-centric, and not just Jerusalem-centric, but even more specifically, the temple specific. Okay? So we need to keep in mind that that's the focus of God's plan for the end times. All of the world is going to be affected. It can't not be, because it's God's final judgment on the world and the people of the world. But the focus of the prophecies are specifically to the Jews and generally to the world apart from the Jews, or in addition to the Jews. All right? So this part of the prophecy is specific to your people, the Jews, and your holy city, which is Jerusalem. Why? What is this decree? Why is it given? There's a number of things that it is given for, and these are important because we're going to have to come back to these to look in light of history and in light of prophecy to see how these things came to be, if they have come to be, and if not, how are they going to come to be? So you're going to want to keep these things in mind as we go through the rest of this chapter, and then as we tie it back into Revelation, okay? Because remember, God's prophecies are not just linear. We are Western thinkers. We like to go from point A to point B. Except for some of you that when you're talking, in order to go from point A to point B, you got to go to Timbuktu. Okay. That's I had a friend, we called him the parenthetical speaker, because he could not just tell you one thought. And so he would start to tell you a thought, and then he would have this parenthetical thought that he had to explain before he could get to the finish of his original thought. But in the midst of that parenthetical thought, he had to insert another parenthetical, and it was like one of those things that just kept going and going and going and going. Take out your batteries. Just tell me what the point is. By the way, men, just can I give you a little word of advice from what I've learned in the years that I was married? Never ask your wife, what's the point? Don't do it. There be dragons. Okay? Because sometimes she may not have a point. And for men, that is baffling. The whole point of communication for men is to get to the point. And it's not that way for women. Okay? As a man, I know it's not that way for you. I don't know what you're doing, but I know I can't overlay on you my understanding because we're not designed the same. Okay? So don't ever say, what's the point? What's the point? Because I'll tell you right now, women, you can agree or disagree with me. That's going to shut her down. Let me tell you about my day, because, that's typically what a woman does when the husband comes in from work. Let me tell you about my day. I want to know about your day. I want to tell you about my day. And they go on and on and on about these things that to a guy, it's very simple. Yeah, I did some shopping. That's all we need to know. I don't care which store you went to. I don't care which way you went to get to that store. I don't care who you met in the store. I don't care what things you bought in the store. I don't care how many bags you had to put in the car. I don't care which route you took home. I don't care which ones went in the fridge, which ones went in the freezer, which ones went in the cupboard. All I need to know is you went to the store. That's it. I'm good. Okay? But that doesn't work for women because God has designed us to be different. And that's marvelous. It's marvelous. Because sometimes children don't need to just get to the point. Sometimes they just need to ramble on. And that's why God gave us moms. Because dads are like, all I want is quiet. Okay? All I want is quiet. But kids, so of the 5 kids that I have, 4 of them were talkers. Now, you guys know me at this stage in my life. Prior to this stage in my life, I was never a talker. And it's exhausting. So we decided to go up to Glacier and it was not a good day because round about Kalispell I started passing a kidney stone. And I don't like long car trips anyway, especially long car trips that don't have a purpose. They don't have a fixed destination. Why are we doing this? We're going to end up right back at home at the end of this day. Okay? But at that point, Benjamin was in his motoring stage. And Christy decided she was just going to let him talk to see how long he would talk. Now let me just tell you right now, verbosity and kidney stones do not go well together. Okay? And we were with Christy's parents, so I'm trying to not vent forth my anger at my ouch. And I don't like a lot of talking to begin with. Christopher is a talker. Benjamin is a talker. Mackenzie is a talker. Thaddeus, not as much as the others, but more so than Donovan. Donovan was the only one that got me. We would have an entire phone conversation in 3 seconds. On my way, okay, click. Done. All the relevant information was passed. I didn't need to know how work went. I didn't need to know the conversations he had with the people at work, with the customers. I didn't need to know any of that. All I needed to know was that he was on his way home. Perfect. That kid, Benjamin, talked. We left Hamilton, and we drove all the way up to Glacier, and we drove all around Glacier. We went going to the Sun Road, and I'll tell you honestly, I don't remember a lot of it because I didn't care at that moment. And then we drove, and we got all the way back down to Ronan. And I finally said, Benjamin, shut up! Do you know what he talked about? Neither did he. Nobody knew what he was talking about. He was just making sounds with his mouth. Okay? I've gotten off. Let's get back into here, into Daniel. All right, so Gabriel comes. He is given an answer. Why is he coming? Because Gabriel says God loves him greatly. 70 weeks are decreed. And so make sure you write down, if you're taking notes, 70 weeks, because we're going to break down these 70 weeks as we go down. But first thing we need to remember, biblical scholars almost universally say that the days in the weeks are specifically years, not like a particular day, but each day is representative of a year. Okay? Keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that to Jews, prophetic dating operates on a 360-day year. Okay? So if you sit down and you do these things with a 365 and a quarter day year, the math doesn't work because they're not operating on the same calendar that we are. All right? So keep those things in mind. Why are these things given? 1, to finish transgression. 2, to put an end to sin. 3, to atone for iniquity. 4, to bring in everlasting righteousness. 5, to seal both vision and prophet. And 6, to anoint a most holy place. So there are 6 things that are going to be addressed in this 70 weeks. And as we look at these things, we can see definitively from history, some of them have been met very specifically. Okay? So, let's read the rest of this chapter, and then we're going to come back and talk about these things. Verse 25, know therefore and understand that from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks. Okay, so here's our first breaking down of the 70 weeks. So you're going to write down here in our first category, the first 7 weeks are going to be dealt with specifically from the time that the word goes forth to rebuild the temple until the coming of the anointed one. What is the Hebrew word for anointed? What's that? Mashiach. What's the Greek word? What's that? Christos. Jesus Christ, the Messiah. Jesus the anointed, the anointed. Okay? So the coming of the anointed one is going to take place at the end of this 7-week period. The beginning of that 7-week period is when the word goes forth to rebuild the temple. Okay? So if we start applying the math, and I have to write this down because I'm not good with numbers in my head. All right, so the first thing that we do, 7 sevens, this is the first category of the 7, is 49 years. 7 times 7 is 49, right? Mathematically that works, correct? Please tell me if I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong, I got to throw this away. 49, right? Okay. So the first 7, the first part of this prophetic prophecy about God's plan for these things coming to pass deals specifically with the 49. There will be 7 sevens, and then let's go down a little bit more, 26. Oh wait, so let me back up to 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks. Then for 62 weeks it shall be built again with squares and moat, but in a troubled time. And after the 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end shall come with a flood, and to the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed. And he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for half of the week he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall come one who makes desolate until the decree end is poured out on the desolator. Excuse me. All right, so here we get further divisions of the 70 weeks. We have the first category, that's the 7 of the 70, 7 weeks. The second one we have is 62 weeks, which 62 times 7 is, any of you math geniuses? I already wrote it down, so I know the answer. What? 434. 434. But then you add in the first 7 weeks, and we end up with 483. Then we're going to turn this, we've got to do more math. Okay, we've got to do more math and take that 483 and stuff it into our solar calendar so that we can understand the significance of these dates. So first we're going to tackle this first 7 weeks. We'll talk about that in a minute. So does anybody know offhand, does Scripture tell us when the order went forth to rebuild the temple? Nehemiah, excellent. Anybody know where in Nehemiah it is? I'll give you a hint. It's right after chapter 1 and before chapter 2, verse 9. Let's flip over to Nehemiah chapter 2. All right. Chapter 2, verse 1. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, I took up the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had not been sad in his presence, and the king said to me, "Why is your face sad, and seeing you are not sick? This is nothing but sadness of the heart." Okay, that's a pretty insightful leader there. At this point, Nehemiah is his cupbearer, and the Artaxerxes looks at him and he says, "Okay, I don't see that you're sick. There's nothing physically wrong with you, but I can see sadness on your face. What's going on?" Then I was very much afraid. I said to the king, "Let the king live forever. Why should not my face be sad when the city, the place of my father's graves, lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire?" Then the king said to me, "What are you requesting?" So I prayed to the God of heaven. I like that. Because right here, he is in a conversation face to face with the king. And you ever have those moments where in an instant you've got heartfelt prayers going up to God? In that moment, man, okay? So in that moment, I lost my place. Where was I? Verse 4. Then the king said to me, "What are you requesting?" So I prayed to the God of heaven. And I said to the king, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's graves, that I may rebuild it." And the king said to me, the queen sitting beside him, "How long will you be gone, and when will you return?" So it pleased the king to send me when I had given him a time. And I said to the king, "If it pleases the king, let letters be given to me for the governors of the provinces beyond the river, that they may let me pass through until I come to Judah." And a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the fortress of the temple, and for the walls of the city, and for the house that I shall occupy. And the king granted me what I asked for the good hand of my God was upon me. So we see this little interchange going on here. Now, there's another thing that I don't want you to confuse here with the return from the exile. Because remember, it was Cyrus who was prophesied to be the king that would send the Jews from their exile back to their homeland. And it was actually the showing of him that his name was prophesied well over 100 years before his reign, that he would be the king to send Israel back. All right, so we know that there was permission before Artaxerxes for the Jews to go back to Israel, to Judah, to Jerusalem. And we see a lot of that in the book of Ezra. Okay, so, but this is a different thing, because Nehemiah understands that people have already gone, but his city still lies in ruins. As a matter of fact, as we read further down in the story, he's going to show up in Jerusalem, and he's going to be like, "What in the world are you guys doing? Come on, chop, chop. We got work to do." Okay, but in this little snippet here, we see a specific time given for when the commission, the word, went forth to rebuild the city. Okay? Now, this is dealing specifically with our first 7 weeks. The 7 weeks are 49 years. Did anybody want to venture a guess how long it took to rebuild the city? Anybody have an idea? Can I give you a hint? I just told you. It took 49 years to rebuild the city and the temple. Okay? So that first 7 is speaking specifically of the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the temple. All right, 49 years. There's our first set of 7. Now we come to 62, second set of years that were given. So from the date of the decree, Artaxerxes says, go and rebuild. And he actually even goes further than that. He actually sends word out to give the Jews what they need to rebuild their city and their temple. So the word goes out, 49 years, the city is rebuilt. Now we come into the second set of years. Got to get back into Daniel here real quick. Daniel chapter 9. Then for 62 weeks it shall be built again with the squares and the moat, but in a troubled time. This is where we go and we look at history. Anybody have any idea what in the world is going on about this time in history? The geopolitical nature of what's happening at this time? I'll give you a hint. His name is Alexander. Okay? It's not at this moment, he's not on the scene yet, but the stage is being set for his coming onto the stage, the global stage. And then we're going to see an incredible shift, because we're up to this time, all of the power had been either in the east or in the south, either with Egypt or with the Babylonians or with the Assyrians or with the Medes or the Persians. That's where all of the power went. But for the first time in the telling of God's story, we see a world power come out of the north. All right? And that's part of what we see in the further prophecies of Daniel, this great goat comes charging out of the west and he tears down the ram and knocks it down. But at the height of his power, the horn would be broken off and 4 smaller horns would rise up in its place. Anybody have any clue about the history of Alexander the Great? He died young, absolutely. So Alexander the Great, they talk about him being Greek. He wasn't Greek, he was Macedonian, just so you're aware. His father, Philip of Macedon, had it in his heart to unite all of Greece under one banner, a Macedonian banner. He was a powerful leader, a powerful king. He was killed in battle, and his son, his teenage son, is now thrust into power. And we see in history one of the greatest military minds ever. Now, Alexander united all of Greece under his banner, and he did that in a very short time. And then he decided, well, let's go see what else is out there that we can add to my kingdom. And so he went up, he crossed over into what is now eastern Turkey. He met and battled the Persian army there, defeated them. Then he went down south, and he was given the keys to the gate in Jerusalem, went over and took Egypt. And then after having conquered all of that, you know, he's thinking, all right, let's see what else we got. And so he started marching east, and he intentionally targeted the Persian Empire and ultimately overthrew the Persian Empire. The ram that was standing by the canal was the Persian Empire, and Alexander was the goat, and he came and overthrew the Persian Empire. He then went on further east and went into what is modern-day India. He stopped there and turned back and ultimately died at a very young age. His empire, which spanned from southern Europe to northern Africa and all of the Middle East, moving into Western Asia, was broken into 4 pieces and given to his 4 generals. All right, so just a little bit of history so you can understand the significance of the prophecies that God said this was going to happen. He put it down in writing. Remember when he's talking about the false gods, he says, "Can you declare from me the end from the beginning? Can you tell me what is yet to come? Because I know these things and you do not." God knows the end from the beginning. And he has made it plain that he knows it. And over and over and over again, we see his prophecies coming to pass. There are some yet to come, and looking backwards should give us great encouragement to look forward to the prophecies yet to be fulfilled. All right, so let's get back into the 62 weeks. First 7 have been taken care of. The temple and the city is being rebuilt. Verse 26, "And after the 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come." Let's stop right there, because from here to the end of this chapter, we are dealing with 2 specific people. Okay? The first one we already know is going to be the anointed one, the Messiah, the Christ. Okay? We know that that is one of the 2 people that is being talked about here because he just told us. But then we see that there is a second person who is called a prince, and this person is going to have an entirely different effect on Israel than the Messiah has. All right? So let's look at this. After 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing. Now, this is where the math gets really wonky for me. Like I told you, I'm not great at math, but we know that a period of 483 years transpired in that 62 weeks. Now, you can look this up on your own. You'll have to trust me. I did not do the math because this is beyond what I'm comfortable doing with. But the scholars have said that if we take that 62 weeks and we put it into a 360-day calendar, and then we take that 360-day calendar and we change it into our solar calendar using the date keeping that we have today, the Julian calendar, not the Gregorian calendar, then we come to a very specific time and place in our history. And the math works out to right around the time that Jesus would have gone up from the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem during the Feast of the Passover, in preparation for the Feast of the Passover. Now, let's look a little bit more about what this prophecy says regarding this passage. And the people of the prince, so right here's the second person, the prince of the people, he's separate from the Messiah, who is to come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end shall come with a flood. I lost my place here. And to the end, there shall be war. Desolations are decreed. So right now we see the general picture of what this prince of the people is going to be doing. We see that the Messiah has been cut off, and we see that there will be a prince that will be raised up, and he says, desolations are decreed. Now that phrase, what's your first thought about desolations are decreed? Bad things are coming, okay? But something that we need to understand with a little bit more specificity is these are decreed by whom? By God. It's not the prince of the people that says, aha, I'm going to make these things happen. We need to remember the Antichrist is a tool. Okay? He is a tool that God is going to use to fulfill his plans. And he's going to come on the scene, and everybody's going to be like, oh my gosh, look at this. Oh, this guy is amazing. He's incredible. He's wonderful. And for a time, it's going to look like he is. For those that have no discernment. It's very easy to beguile the masses. If you don't believe me, look at Germany, 1932. The rise of Hitler. How in the world could a country believe that what they did as a nation, the horrific things they did, not just against the Jews, but also against any caste of people that Hitler did not like, the war that brought death to millions, how could they believe that this was the good thing, a good thing? Because they wanted it to be true. Everybody wants to feel like they are special. The same thing happened in Russia. The same thing happened in China. The same thing happens all over the world. People will be easily beguiled if they're told what they want to hear. Okay? So, 62 years, Jesus is cut off. We have this statement, he shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. It shall come with a flood, and to the end there shall be war, desolations, or decree. Now here, this next passage is a parenthetical statement that goes back and overlays the previous passage. So, in verse 27, and he who, we're talking about the prince of the people, and he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week and for half of the week. He shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. So the first thing that we see here is that at the beginning of this last week, there is going to be a prince of the people who is going to make a strong covenant with the people. This is all people. This is something that we need to be mindful of when the tribulation happens. The first part of the tribulation is the deceit that the Antichrist, that the false prophet, that the dragon will subject the entirety of the world to, specifically in regard to Israel, but also generally to the rest of the world. Okay? So we're given a period of a week, and for the first half of that week, the covenant will be in place, and then after that first 3.5 years, we see he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. So now let's just kind of straighten up the words that are being used here to make it a little bit more logically. We have a 7-year span of time that is specifically addressed. We have a 3.5-year span that the covenant is in place. At the end of that 3.5-year span, we have the remaining 3.5 years that have yet to be dealt with. We see here that the Antichrist is going to put an end to sacrifice. So the temple, we know, will be rebuilt at that time. We know that sacrifices will be ongoing. We know what we looked at in chapter 12 of Daniel, and in Revelation 11, we know that the outer court is given over to the nations to be trampled by the nations, but that there is a treaty in place such that the Israel can worship in their temple. I believe that agreement that comes into place, the covenant that it comes into place, is that the temple will be back on the Temple Mount where it is supposed to be, but as a part of the security for that, I believe that the Antichrist will make an agreement with the Jews that they can have this part of the Temple Mount for their stuff, and then the outer part, the outer courtyard, is given over to the nations. One of the things that I struggle with in understanding about God's plan is, what do we do with the Muslims? What do we do with the Muslims? Because right now, the Muslims have no interest in having peace with Israel. As a matter of fact, it is actually illegal to go up onto the Temple Mount and pray. You will be escorted out, probably after you get beamed with a couple of rocks. Okay? It's illegal at this point. Why? because two of the holy places in Islam are on the Temple Mount, the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. Those are two of the top 5 holy places in all of Islam. So how in the world is the temple going to be put back where it's supposed to go on the Temple Mount? I think this is part of the strong covenant that the Antichrist will bring about. I have nothing to say this other than my ponderings. So write it down, put a great big circle around it, put a question mark, and then at some point when we all find out, you'll know whether I was right or I was wrong. And I'm absolutely okay with being wrong on this one. All right? What I think is going to happen is those two holy places are going to stay where they are. The temple will be put up, and the outer court of the temple will be where the nations trample, because they're going to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. Could those things be torn down by then? Possibly. I'm okay if they are. Doesn't bother me. And you know why it doesn't bother me? Because from what I understand of Scripture, I'm not going to be here to see it. Okay? So I'm absolutely okay with being wrong on that, because I won't be here for you guys to poke fun at. You won't be here either, so don't poke fun at me in heaven either. All right? So, the 3.5 years comes, the covenant is broken, and then he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate. Now, here's something that we need to keep in mind. We know that the temple has been desolated. There have been abominations at it at least twice in the history of the temple. Okay, we know that the first desolation of the temple came when Antiochus the fourth came in and he sacrificed a pig on the altar. We know that that was historically accurate. We know that Jesus even made reference to the abomination which has come and will come. All right. Now, some people believe that there is a second abomination, that when Titus attacked the temple after everything was thrown down, he had sacrifices also in the area that the temple would have stood. I don't know about that. I don't know that that really fits with the abomination that makes desolate, because the temple at that point was most likely destroyed. However, we do know that there is a desolation yet to come, because all of these prophecies have not yet been fulfilled. All right? Because we look at this and we go, okay, well, this was written several hundred years before Jesus came and before the second temple fell, but we also know that John makes reference to the abomination that makes desolate in Revelation, and that would be that prophecy that was given is some 20 years after the second temple was destroyed. So if we put these things together, there is yet to come an abomination that makes desolate. Okay? So, let's get back here real quick. He is going to do this abomination that makes desolate until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. So here's what we need to take away from this. I told you that the Antichrist is a tool. He is going to be used by God to accomplish God's purposes. But his end has already been decreed. God has already said, you will come to this point and no further. We talked a little bit about that last week with Job and Satan came into God, and God said, okay, you can go up to this point and no further. And then Satan came back, and God said, okay, yeah, even unto, you can affect his body, but unto his death you can't kill him. Okay, God established the boundaries. And even though the Antichrist is going to look like he's got it all, he's having all of the victory, there is a decree in place for his ending. It will end. Okay? One of the things that we have to take great hope in is the story doesn't end in the tribulation. The tribulation ends in the story. There's more yet to come. Okay? So, 70 weeks are decreed. The first 7 are given specifically to the rebuilding of the temple and Jerusalem. Then there is a 62-week period where the anointed one, the Messiah, at the end of that 62 weeks will be cut off. And then there is a 7-week period where the Antichrist, or the prince of the people, will make a covenant, break the covenant, and bring the abomination that causes desolation. Now, the reason I look at this last week is because I believe that is yet to come. And the reason I believe that is just what I explained. We know that Daniel prophesied it. We know that this happened in the intertestamental period. We know that Jesus made reference to it. We know that after the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, some 20 years later, John receives the revelation and speaks again about an abomination that makes desolate. That abomination, if we go back to Daniel, we see that the desolator has been given a week, and at the end of that time, his end has been decreed. Okay? Antiochus IV Epiphanes did not last to 7 years in Jerusalem. The math doesn't work. But we know that God is faithful to his promises, and we know that there is going to be yet a time. The first thing that we should be looking for in relation to this, in relation to what's going on in Israel, is when that temple goes up, we know the time is near. Okay? And I've seen, read a lot of articles, I've seen videos. You know, they can have that temple up very, very quickly. Everything is already ready to go. They're just waiting for the word go. Okay? So the temple, I believe, will be rebuilt. I believe that it will be central to the end time prophecies regarding the dragon, the beast, the Antichrist, and the return of Jesus. And in that specific time, that 70th week, the last week of sevens, there will be a covenant made with the Antichrist and all people, but specifically with Israel. And that 3.5-year period, there will be peace. The Jews will have to give up something. The world will have to give up something. But at the end of the 3.5 years, the Antichrist will break that covenant. And there will be 300 years, or 3.5 years, what is often referred to as the Great Tribulation, where horrible things will come against Israel. Why are horrible things going to come against Israel? I'll tell you plain and simple. Well, yeah, God said. That's how that works. God said, and so it happens. But why is that happening? Because I believe it is going to take that kind of a national cataclysm to drive